Hi, everyone. My name is Alex Markovich, and I'm the sponsored content editor at License Global. I'm excited to share with you the opportunity to listen to our License Global webinar, License to Win, Transforming into a Star Licensee, sponsored by FADEL, where we will discuss the core demands that a licensor expects from their partners, including financial and operational requirements. We have just a few announcements before we dive in. This webinar is designed to be interactive. There are widgets at the bottom of your screen, which will allow you to learn about today's speakers, download resources, and participate in the Q&A session that takes place at the end of our presentation. The reaction widget will allow you to share your reactions with emojis during the presentation today. The slides will advance automatically throughout the event. Towards the end of our webinar, we will ask you to complete our survey found on the right-hand side of your screen. Please take a moment to fill this out before leaving us today, as your feedback will provide us with valuable information on how we can further improve these events. Lastly, if you are experiencing any technical problems, please click the Help widget or type your issue into the Q&A widget, and we'll be glad to offer one-on-one assistance. If you'd like a copy of the slides that are shared today as well, please ask via the Q&A widget. Now on to the presentation, License to Win, Transforming into a Star Licensee. Discussing today's topics are Dave and Greg. Dave is a COO at FADEL, and Greg is the Vice President of Product Management at FADEL. To learn more about our speakers, please visit the speakers widget. Dave, take it away.
Hey, great, thank you. Thank you very much, appreciate it. We are looking forward to today's presentation for sure, and really appreciate the audience attention and looking forward to participation today as well, as we really start talking about how to transform licensees into star licensees, particularly in the eyes of our licensors. It's great to have my colleague and my good friend Gregg Guest on this morning. Greg, how are you today?
Hey, Dave. Good to see you. Great to be here with you. Really excited for our discussion today.
Yeah, same here. Yeah, we're East Coast, West Coast, so we're tag teaming each other on either side of the coast here today. You know, FADEL, we've been working together now for, just about 15 years, maybe a little over 15 years. And FADEL, you know, has got a very rich history in the licensing side of the world. You know, we handle on our platform a little over 28% of all of the royalties being processed worldwide across consumer products. The reach and depth and the licensees that we work with are the largest in the world, and they've come to trust us from you know, an infrastructure and a delivery perspective, as well as just from a thought leadership perspective, and working with them to continue to expand our portfolio of products to enable them to be successful with their licensees. And clearly we've got a new release of a product out, which we think is going to help align that message and align that the relationship between licensees and licensors. One of the key ones that we started out with when we first started going down this journey was a little company called Marvel Entertainment at the time. And Greg, you used to work at Marvel. You want to give a quick little background of what it was that not only that you did at Marvel, but the challenges that they had that we were then able to help out with?
Yeah, I'm hesitant to say that was 20 years ago when I joined Marvel. Next year will be 20 years actually to the date when I joined Marvel Entertainment. And at the time, it was actually a really exciting time at Marvel. And I think as far as FADEL's success in this industry, you know, it's due in large part to the fact that we started with probably one of the most complicated consumer merchandise licensors out there, right? And so we really cut our teeth at the right place in working with Marvel. But I joined Marvel at a really interesting time in 2005, which was right around the time of their first Spider-Man movie. And they had come out of a kind of a bad bankruptcy and were trying to rejuvenate their business by expanding beyond comic books into Hollywood. They hadn't successfully been able to do that. Previous comic book movies had really flopped. But with the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man, they were able to license that property out to Sony and make a successful movie, and it was doing well. And so with that came a slew of consumer merchandising opportunities for them, in addition to knowing they were going to be making 2 more Spider-Man movies. And to handle the volume that was coming in from a royalty validation and processing perspective from their licensees. They just couldn't do it on the legacy systems they had. They were working in an Access database, I believe it was, and it just wasn't going to scale for that. So I was brought in to lead that project of creating a new global licensing system at Marvel. And we brought in FADEL to partner with us on the technology side and build the system. And that was really the first version of FADEL's IPM suite that we built as the global licensing system at Marvel. And it really helped Marvel. I love the fact that in a small way, we were a part of a major success story for Marvel, because without that, it would have been harder for them to leverage those properties and grow the way they did, to the point where Spider-Man did very well. The X-Men movies did well. They then had the kind of cachet to start their own Hollywood studio. And in order to do that, they were able to look at that royalty data that we were capturing for them to discover, of the other characters they were selling, which ones had the most value and where should they look next to go. They had already licensed out Spider-Man, X-Men, the Hulk to other studios, so they couldn't make those themselves. So they had to kind of look at the data and look at where to go next. And that led them to Iron Man, which was obviously a great choice. And then Iron Man was hugely successful. And eventually they got bought by Disney. So it's a great story. And, always a point of pride for me professionally that we were kind of there at the beginning of that story.
Yeah. And I mean, you love working with us so much, you decided to come over and work with us, not just, together shoulder to shoulder from a customer partner relationship that we had with Marvel, but actually to come and drive product because you saw the value behind it.
It's true. The technology was so cool that we developed that I really saw the opportunity to take that wider to a bunch of licensors, and that's obviously what we did. And as you said, over a quarter of the world's consumer merchandise royalties are going through our system at some of the largest licensors out there, and as a result, we're also working with some of the top tier licensees out there, which gives us some of the information you're going to hear today.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I mean, you talked about data driven, and really, look, this is a data driven industry, and the complexity, as you said, is absolutely huge. And that's not just for the licensors. Licensees have to deal with that level of complexity that the licensors come up with. They're constantly changing the types of data that they want to capture, coming up with new and different types of licensing options, FOB, flat rates, tiered rates, umbrellas, guarantees, et cetera, et cetera. And that's always changing. That's one of the challenges that licensees, I think, have, is that working with these major companies from a licensing perspective, you need to ensure that you are, right on the edge of the game when it comes to managing the data, understanding it, capturing it appropriately, and then reporting it out. I think that's really the challenge. I remember this one little number just to kind of drive that point home, which was when we were working at Marvel, there were over 14.5 billion permutations of the types of licensing that was going on at the time between the Marvel Universe, all of the characters, the bundling behind it, territories, exclusions, exclusivities, languages, formats, etc. It's just absolutely massive. And I think what we've really found is that the industry has matured and continues to evolve, is that it's completely data driven, and having your arms around that data is absolutely critical to be able to manage your business as a licensee and interact with those licensors. And that's why we're so happy and so proud to be able to announce that we've developed a product that's specifically for licensees and that we're rolling that out to the market. So more on that as we come. You take a look at striving for excellence in the marketplace and trying to be that star licensee, the partner to the licensor. It's critical to be able to identify yourself as one of the top tiers, because it provides you with additional and incremental opportunities as time goes on. You basically grow your business based on the integrity of you as a licensee. And what it takes to get to a level of integrity is pretty darn complex at the end of the day. Some of that you see on the slides, but maybe, if you could just take a moment, Greg, from, I'll call it the licensor's perspective, looking outwards towards the licensee pool of licensees for certain. What are the types of, what's the profile? What's the persona? What are you looking for from a star licensee? and it seems we may have had an issue with Greg and his camera. While he's working on that, I think, you know, as we take a look at the type of behavior that is looked for from licensors, I mean, I think to me, one of the top things is creativity, right? There are a lot of people out there who are incredibly creative from a licensee perspective with the types of products and capabilities that are being delivered to market. So creativity is definitely one aspect of it. You know, whether you're looking at, you know, bobbleheads, or you're looking at sheets, or you're looking at air fresheners, whatever it is, a whole gamut of different types of products that could be licensed out. So, you know, creativity is key to that. I think one of the other areas for sure, beyond the creativity, is the reliability that you have as a vendor. You know, what kind of data are you reporting back? Do you have the ability to forecast? Is your manufacturing of your product aligned to the various, you know, compliance regulations and processes that are necessary to ensure, you know, to the licensor that the product that you're going to deliver is one that is going to enhance the reputation that they have, and the product that they have created, the IP, is being appropriately represented, so that it's not going to impugn their integrity, and thereby, you know, you come across as being incredibly capable. Greg, are there other things? You know, I briefly talked about creativity, and I talked a little bit about compliance and production. What other aspects from a licensor view of licensees, you know, gets the licensee to that next level?
Yeah, I think and sorry for the technical glitch there. Hopefully you can hear me okay now.
That way you know it's live, Greg.
Yeah, exactly. This is not canned. I think, you know, from a licensor perspective, obviously you talked about the creative part. You know, there's the creative side of the business. Then there's the data side of the business, as you're talking about. Yeah. Underneath it, there's a lot of data that goes into this. The data that a licensor is looking for is, you know, what's the financial opportunity here, right? And so forecasting becomes a big piece of what's necessary from a licensee perspective, is to be able to really accurately forecast what their sales are going to be. And that's going to drive things like where the guarantees get set in an agreement with a licensor, which is always kind of the first thing a licensor is going to ask, like, what can you guarantee me in sales, right?
Show me the money.
Yeah, exactly. And so, you know, it is a business. It's a fun business, but it's still a business, right? And so it comes back to being able to look at your own data as a licensee and be able to crunch that data in a way that you can confidently provide forecast information to a licensor to let them know that this is how I'm going to perform, and I'm confident that I can meet this goal. And then you're more likely to be able to negotiate a deal that works for both parties if you can provide that data.
So yeah, again, data driven, right? It's not only you know, accuracy of the data, but being able to believe in the data that you have so that you can predict where you're going to be is not only good for the licensor, but what you're also saying is because you have that ability, the licensor is going to view you better and probably give you more opportunities to help them manage their business and their success. Is that kind of what I'm hearing?
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And I think another thing that just jumped into my mind, I don't know if you mentioned it when I dropped off, is like compliance stuff. So there's been a big push for compliance in certain areas from licensees in terms of factories. So and this kind of isn't a data issue, right? This is more of an operational issue, which is, you know, where are you producing your goods? How are you producing your goods? Things like fair trade or you know, labor policies come into play, and those are becoming, you know, those things have been important to licensors for a while now, but now other things are coming into it that are more kind of socially driven, if you will. Things like, you know, are you green? Are you operating green? What's your carbon footprint, right? What are your DEI policies? Do you embrace diversity and inclusion and equity in your business practices? And so because those things reflect on a brand, on a licensor brand, they're going to want to enforce that down through their licensees to make sure that they're not working with companies that could give them a ding their brand reputation in that regard. So that's another area that's important for licensees to keep in mind.
Yeah, I think it's important for all businesses, quite frankly. Even here at FADEL, we work with some of the largest brands in the world, luxury brands and others, and they have those types of policies, which, you know, we gladly adhere to. We have our own policies that do that, but I think people are absolutely becoming more socially aware. So that's definitely, you know, one area that you need to focus on. But coming back, you know, specifically to, you know, show me the money, right? You know, stealing from Jerry Maguire. It's all about, how do you get the data in and out of your system? Are you sure that you have the ability to manage your SKUs properly? Do you fully understand what you've actually licensed? You know, did I license the Avengers? Does that mean I can show the Hulk? The answer is no, but not understanding that can get you into trouble. And so the people who have been able to kind of understand good SKU management, understand exactly what the terms of their license agreements are avoiding things like penalties, or, you know, violations, and quite frankly, the ability to, you know, produce accurate results and reports is going to lessen the pain of an audit, should you get one, or in some cases, you may even be able to avoid an audit, right? Which is nothing that any licensee wants to go through. And quite frankly, the licensors don't want to do it either. They spend tens of millions of dollars doing this on an annual basis. And if you can, you know, show that you've got the integrity from a data and a reporting perspective, you might get hit once, but you probably aren't going to get hit twice in any particular time. So there's some risk avoidance that's associated with good data management.
And that's
you know,
where
the companies. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, sorry to jump on you. And that's really where the main pain point that you see in the process is, and it's a pain point on both sides, as you said, for licensees and licensors, is the royalty calculation, processing, and royalty submission typically on a quarterly basis, right? So as a licensee, that's a key thing you have to be prepared to do, is submit on time. There's penalties for not submitting on time if you're not getting your royalty reports in to your licensors on time. So if you can't do it efficiently and get that done on time, that's going to be a problem for you and for the licensor is going to have a problem with that. You mentioned some unapproved SKUs and things like that as well. Another big issue that we see is that validation of the royalty report. So once it's generated and submitted, a ton of work goes into the validation of it. And a lot of that can sometimes reveal, you know, inconsistencies in the data as far as, again, properties that you're selling that you might not be licensed for. And it might not be intentional. It might be, an oversight on the contract terms or the agreement that you had, or lack of understanding of the IP that you've licensed because you haven't really captured that in an explicit manner. So, and those can all delay the process in working with the licensor and create tension between the licensee and the licensor, and that can ultimately lead to, you know, not the healthiest of relationship. And you want your relationship with your licensors to be very smooth and operate very smoothly. So royalty processing, being able to do that and have structured data is great, which is why what FADEL's doing is so exciting, because we're working with both licensors and licensees, right? So it's the same data set. And it's a shared data set between licensors and licensees, which takes out a lot of the guesswork and provides the opportunity for a lot of automation.
Yeah, no, great point. And so, you know, clearly not everybody needs full-blown automation. Not everybody starts out that way. It's crawl, walk, run, right? And I think, you know, it might be worth, you know, kind of walking through a little of a, you know, I'll call it a timeline of growth that a lot of people are going through as they start out as a licensee. You know, they in some cases, they may not even start out as, you know, really a licensee. They may be in a different business or something that's tangential to, and then evolve into a licensing business. And then, you know, growing across time, managing it internally, doing it on paper, you know, contracts. Now it's, you know, Excel and you know, PDFs and OneDrive or wherever you're storing your documents and things like that. But at some point in time, it gets complex. Maybe could you walk us through kind of like the life span of a licensee and how to not only, you know, get more automated, what does it take along the way, and then how do you become a star, right? And some of it's luck. There's no doubt about it, but being in the right place.
There's a lot of factors that go into it, like everything in life, right? But and this kind of, you know, illustrative journey here is going to be different for everybody. But some of the largest licensees that I'm sure you all know started as very small, home-owned companies, essentially with very small number of employees, and doing something very specific that is different than where they ended up once they got, to the end of their journey or further down in their journey. So they might have started out as, for example, selling candy out of a store, and ended up becoming a massive, costume company, or they might have started as a small textile company, and now they're one of the major, bedding and towels, et cetera, licensee companies out there. And so those types of companies, typically all of them has started, 10, 20, 30 years ago in some cases as very small companies. And then we're able to unlock that journey along the way by experiencing growth as they went. And so that first major license is key. If you can get that first major license for something like Spider-Man, if you're lucky enough, as you said, it's not all luck, but if you're lucky enough to get, a Spider-Man license or something like that, that's going to be a great first step. But that's a big first step. Probably that biggest step in the ladder is that first step, because you're going to have to prove to a licensor that you can live up to the expectations on that property. And if you're still small, you might not have a huge track record of that. So that's, again, where creativity, innovation comes in, right? If you have a creative product or an innovative product, that's going to help you sell that first licensor and get on their radar and get that first property. Or if you just have a product that's taken off and you are doing a huge number of sales, that's going to raise their eyebrows as well. And then, once you get that property, what's great with most of these big licensors is these IPs, they're not like singular IPs, right? They're franchises. So if you can get something like a Spider-Man and do well at it, there's going to be a Spider-Man 2 and a Spider-Man 3. And that's true whether you're talking about, Harry Potter or Marvel or Lucasfilm or, whatever you're talking about these days. That's the way it works, right? For these big properties, which are the ones that have large consumer merchandise programs around them. So if you can look for something that you think or know is going to be a long-term franchise, then as a licensee, that's a fish you want to go for, right? Because that's going to pay off dividends as you go. But once you get that first one, you got to perform in order to get that second one, right? So that's where you really need to be prepared to have the tools, the technology tools that can help you efficiently manage the sales data, the SKUs, calculate the royalties, and report those royalties on a timely and accurate basis to the licensor. If you can do that.
So you might be able to do everything right, from a creativity and a marketing and a delivery and a manufacturing and everything else may be going perfectly. But if you can't get that data set back to the licensor to show that you are actually executing properly and you're giving them the data that they need so that they're successful, you might be locked out of the next opportunity. Is that kind of the risk here?
You could be. That's definitely a risk. I mean, again, a lot of it is about the money, right? How much sales is coming in, right? So if you're sending me a royalty report late, but you're doing a ton of business, that's this consideration they're going to have. But it's not a good look for a licensee to have late royalty reports or inaccurate royalty reports. There's somebody else waiting in the wings to take that license, right? Somebody that might have better tools or better technology or be more equipped operationally to succeed with that licensor. So you don't want to give the licensor the opportunity to make that decision in any event. You want to do well and have a great relationship. So they're going to give you the next property and the next property, and you're going to grow your business, grow your number of employees, et cetera.
Yeah, no, it makes perfect sense. And you touched on, I'll call it the trifecta of licensing, right? It's, financial reporting and production, right? The different axes that you really have to execute across for all of these. And clearly you need the flexibility to be able to do it. You need the agility to make it happen as the licensors change. I remember at one point in time, the licensing templates were being changed all the time. Where, if I recall correctly, Marvel wanted to start capturing all of the zip codes of all of the comic book stores. And it wasn't something that they previously had, was that level of granularity of geographical coverage across some of their products so that they knew how they could segment. So that kind of evolution of licensor demands gets pushed onto the licensees. And clearly this is where, a system, Excel spreadsheets just aren't going to scale to a certain point. You really need to get that system. So maybe talk a little bit about, this trifecta, and then we can move on to some of the other, I'll call it the demands necessary. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, style guides and brand assurance, product approval is a really interesting part of the process. And I think, it's integral to having a program as a licensee that is buttoned up in terms of relating back to the IP that you've licensed and the royalties that you're going to report, because the SKU itself is the thing that connects those two things. It's the connection between, Spider-Man and a t-shirt, right? And the royalties that are going to be generated from the sales of that t-shirt. So from a production perspective, once you sign an agreement, it's really important to connect that process of signing an agreement with a licensor to your product development process in production, so that you can track the right data, so that when you report the sales of that SKU back, you're doing it in a way that's in line and aligned with the actual license that you got from the licensor. So that's a key thing to be able to manage. And we see from the licensor side, a lot of pitfalls in that process, where they get things like unapproved SKUs, or you have the rights to do t-shirts, but you're submitting sneakers, or you have the rights for Spider-Man and you're submitting Hulk, because you don't understand the difference between those characters. And at Marvel, and I'm sure it's this way at many of the licensors, the character-based licensing, character-based style guides get very, very specific as far as which characters you can use and how you can use them.
Yeah. Yeah, clearly. And having that level of confusion can cost you money and penalties and violations. It can also cost you, reputationally as well, right? So, I mean, that's absolutely critical to get that and track it properly. So let's talk a little bit about, what it means from a technology foundation perspective. What do we have to have? And I'm actually going to go to the next slide, because it talks about it a little nicer, right? From a system and a product perspective, what do you need to have today? Sure, you might be able to do this manually, but it's probably taken a heck of a lot of work, a heck of a lot of effort. There probably is confusion inside of the system. Are you sure you're aligned with the different deals or the agreements that you have with the right people, so that you're capturing the proper data required, and then the ability to be able to report on that data as you go forward? So, can I ingest my sales data and put that into my system and be able to then validate, verify, ensure that it is correct and accurate? Is it aligned to the actual agreements? I think is something that is absolutely critical for licensees as they scale. Maybe take a quick second and talk about, kind of the journey around the circle, so to speak, or this closed loop of licensing, and some insights there would be very helpful.
Yeah, I think, as I was saying, like, it's very important to connect these parts of the process together. And so when you do a deal with a licensor, you want to make sure that you're capturing the underlying data of that deal. So what are the guarantees? What are the royalty rates? Which royalty rates apply to which characters? What are the specific characters, as I was saying, that I've got licensed, and what can I do with those? And that's during the negotiation process, you end up with a deal sheet and then an agreement, and it's a piece of paper, a contract like any other contract. If you just throw it in a filing cabinet, that doesn't do you much good in terms of the data processing part of this. And so having that tied to a data processing operation, where you can turn that information from that agreement deal into data, so that you can drive that through your product development, through your product approval process, and through to the royalty calculation, then allows you to take that sales data in by SKU and very easily identify what the royalty rate is based on the character or the category that license is in, know exactly where you stand on your guarantees, know if you're in overages or not, et cetera, et cetera. And without that data, it's harder to do that. And you're going to end up doing, a lot of work in spreadsheets if you don't have a tool to do it.
Yeah,
and then
I was going to say, I'm going to stop you there for a second, because you brought up a real interesting point that I didn't want to get lost before we get to performance and analytics, right? Which is, you start from a deal sheet or a term sheet or an agreement, call it what you want, depending upon which vendor you're talking to. But that deal sheet, because of where we sit in the industry, at 30% of all the consumer products licensing in the world, is going through our systems. We have a unique ability to, really, because we provide them with the system for the licensor. It's two sides of the coin. Licensee is just on the other side of that coin. It's a kind of a reciprocal mirror image. And so the ability to take that agreement that you're getting from, whether it's, Disney, Marvel, Hasbro, and some others, to take that and enter it directly into our system to ensure that you have one-for-one correspondence and agreement between what the licensor has in their system and what you have in yours, ensures that you're capturing the proper data and you're also reporting on the exact data that's required, right? And that's kind of where, the royalty statement generation comes in. You've removed errors and omissions that may have happened, and confusion and any kind of disconnect. But then at the same time, you're going to be able to, once you have that all in there, start doing analytics, right? And I think that's what you were getting to next.
Yeah, and I like where you're going with that, and I think we have a slide coming up that really illustrates what you were just talking about as far as tying the data back to the actual deal sheet. But just to finish out here on the circle, the benefit of having all that in place isn't just being able to generate your royalty report on time and accurately and get it to your licensor. It's then you have this wealth of data to analyze, right? And so to get that next deal, now you have a ton of data that you can analyze to show what you sold, how you sold it, how much royalties you generated, et cetera, so that when you go to the next big licensor and say, hey, look how well I did with Spider-Man at Marvel, don't you want to give me Barbie or whatever, you start to get this analytics, performance analytics that really help you grow your business as a licensee.
Yeah. And so, we touched on it and you mentioned it. So here we go. We're going to dive right in for the types of, here are the foundational attributes. Here are the areas. And clearly not everything is shown here because we wanted to keep the slide reasonably simple. But, we're all in this business, right? And the people that are attending this fully understand exactly, A, the level of complexity, B, the different types of foundational attributes that are out there, and then as well as all of the different types of permutations of data that you absolutely have to capture and make sure that there's a one-for-one correspondence with your licensor, or your reports and your conversations are going to come back, from them saying, you missed this, you didn't have that, no, you reported something that was inaccurate, you didn't have the license for, et cetera, et cetera. So maybe just quickly, kind of the highlights of this would be great to understand.
Oh yeah, I'm excited for this one because this is really the cool part, right? Because I want to make sure I explain this so people understand. We're really lucky at FADEL to be in this really unique position of working directly with all these large licensors to manage their royalty programs, right? Because like you said, it's a coin with two sides. So this information you see here on this particular deal sheet about which properties are being licensed, which categories are being licensed, what the royalty rates are, et cetera, is the exact data that the licensor is putting into their royalty and deal system. So they're entering this data actually, and then this data is feeding through from them directly into licensee here to your side of the coin as a licensee. So there's no data reentry, there's no opportunity for mismatch or mistake at that point. It's the same exact data that the licensor is working with. And that becomes important because, as I said, you could see here the properties get very complicated when you talk about style guides and specific characters. And if you report Captain Fabulous as, Fabulous Captain, that's going to be a problem, right? It's at Marvel, one of the biggest problems they had, believe it or not, was what we called the hyphen problem, which is that Spider-Man has a hyphen in it, Spider-Man. And if you didn't get the hyphen in it, it would create all kinds of data issues because it's supposed to have a hyphen. So they'll kick your product out, from the brand assurance if you don't put that hyphen in. So this kind of eliminates that kind of guesswork in the process. And then, it takes that property data and that category data, and then you see SKUs there. Like you said, we can show everything here, but you do see SKUs mentioned there. The key thing is that SKU is defined by this property and this category. And that's what defines a SKU. And the SKU is what drives a royalty rate, because a royalty rate is also related to a property and or a category, also a region, but the region really is more dependent on the sales data rather than the SKU data. So the SKU is your property and your category, and the sales data is your territory and your channel of distribution. And then with all that data in place, the engine just marries that together to say, I see a t-shirt with Spider-Man. It was sold in Germany through retail. Bada bing, bada boom. That's a 10% royalty rate or whatever it might be.
Right.
And then it can track that against your guarantees for that particular category or property.
And so you as a licensee start throwing in your sales data, and now that you have your agreement all mapped out and you're 100% in alignment from a correspondence perspective with your licensor, you now are throwing in your sales data and you're ingesting that, right? Whether it's out of your ERP system, whatever that may be, your financial system sales data is coming in, it's getting fed into the system, you're uploading it, and it's going in and it's properly aligning. So then the next thing is to say, okay, now that I've imported my sales, I want to validate it against my contract, i.e. my agreements and my deals. Is there something there that does not make sense? Let's automatically check that for you. Okay, that looks good. Now let's sit there and let's calculate all of the royalties based on what we've had in the agreement, based on the permutations of what have been aligned to in that agreement and the rates that you've negotiated. And, what are the holdbacks? What were the minimum guarantees? Was there something for reserves and returns, marketing fund? Is there umbrella, cross-collateralization? There's all types of things that, got calculated during all of this. And then you're getting to the point where it says, generate my statement, right? So maybe walk a little through the process and the pains and the pitfalls that people may be going through today during this very, from a systemic perspective, a very efficient and highly performant process into, what some people may be experiencing today.
Yeah, I mean, again, this is where most of the pain is, right? On both sides of the coin. People are spending hours and hours and hours crunching spreadsheets of sales data to match it to royalty rates, to submit it to the licensor. And then the licensor on their side is, spending hours and hours going through it, validating it against deals, et cetera. This is why we work with both sides of the coin, right? Because licensors also benefit from this type of technology because it makes it easier for them to check and validate the royalty reports coming in. So there's just a really huge room here for improvement and time savings and efficiency in order to be able to have this, once you set it up again, and you have those deal terms feeding into the system, and it's all that data is waiting for sales. And then you're going out and you're doing your sales and your sales data is coming back in and you're just matching SKUs. Really, you're just doing SKU matching at that point. And the engine's doing all that for you, matching a SKU in your sales data to a royalty rate on your deal, calculating it from the net sales to the royalty due, generating the report, and making that available for submission directly to the licensor. And then when the licensor is getting it, they already have most of that same data because your SKU has already been submitted through their product approval process. It's tied to the same data on their side of the coin. And so it makes it much easier for them as well to look at it and process it and find any issues with it. So the speed is a great, return on investment that you're going to get here on the technology is that your speed, you're never going to be, you're rarely going to be late. I won't ever say never because you still have issues with sales data and getting your sales data and stuff. But you'll always, be ready to generate your royalty statements in a much more timely basis, which will remove the penalties, any penalties, risk of penalties that you would have there. And then the other side is the accuracy, right? Because this really locks the data down in a way where you're going to have much more accurate royalty reports, which again could, inaccurate reports could lead to penalties or worse, the dreaded audit. Now the audits from an audit perspective, some licensors will audit by default on a periodic basis, right? Because they don't know what they don't know. So they want to audit everybody to find out if they missed anything, right? Because every dollar counts. And, there could be things in your sales data that didn't get reported for some reason or whatever. So you might still be subject to audits occasionally, but with a system and technology like this in place, servicing those audits becomes a lot easier too, because you already have all this data gathered. You don't have to, spin out a bunch of resources frantically to gather the sales data and check it and everything. You pretty much can just open the coffer at that point and say, well, here it is. Take a look, and hopefully you get a green light and pass.
Here's my sales data. Here are my reports. This is how it was calculated. This is the deal. Here you go. Mr. Auditor, take a look at all this. And you have a whole
audit trail for that, which is exactly what an audit trail is for. So. Yeah.
One of the things, a little red box up in the corner there where it says generate royalty statement. Simple 3 words, right? Oh my goodness, how many different formats are there out there that you actually have to generate too? Good news is as we're starting out here, out of the box, you've got the big 3, which may be 20% of your business, it may be 80% of your business is a licensee, completely handled out of the box for doing that statement generation, and then the flexibility to generate virtually any other type of statement from, we call it a master royalty report. More to come. This has been a great conversation. I know you and I, we could talk about this stuff for hours, but I think we're probably getting to the point where there's some good questions that are coming in. A lot of great attendees have been hanging out with us, probably waiting for their opportunity to get their questions answered. So I'm going to pass it on to Alex. If you don't mind, Alex, bring us into Q&A and other items.
Yeah, thank you again so much, Dave and Greg, for allowing License Global to be the platform where you share this information. It's really so interesting to see how much technology can help a licensee and improve the streamlining process within the business. Now, before we begin today's Q&A, and as I previously mentioned in the beginning of the webinar, we would really appreciate it if you took some time to do our webinar survey available on the right-hand side of the presentation window. If you close the survey accidentally, simply reopen the widget by clicking on the clipboard icon along the bottom of your screen. Thank you in advance for filling out the feedback. And now onto the question and answer portion of our event. As a reminder, to participate in the Q&A, just type your question into the box located to the left of the presentation window or click the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen. If we are not able to answer all the questions, we will share them with our speakers and they'll reply offline. So we have a few. I think the first one that we're going to start with is, does the FADEL software / platform integrate with most ERP systems like Sage 1?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so I'll take that. So the answer is yes. And the way that we integrate typically on the licensee side is what we're going to do is we're going to take a CSV file and we're going to do imports on that. There are some APIs available, but that's typically not leveraged by people. Depending upon the licensee side, you may or may not have the expertise to be able to do that. Clearly, we're a software company, but we also have a consulting organization. Our professional services team could absolutely work with you if you wanted to automate that from an integration perspective. But most people are just going to take extracts from a CSV perspective of their sales data in a particular format, which we identify, and that just gets very easily uploaded into the system. Hopefully that takes care of that question.
Greg, anything else to add, or did Dave pretty much cover it?
No, I think Dave's the expert on the ERP stuff, but I will say that from the very beginning, these are financial systems, right? And so from the very beginning, the work we did at Marvel was really explicitly tied in at that point to their Oracle ERP backbone. And so, payment schedules, accounts payable, all that is really a part of the process. We didn't get into a lot of it today. Most of it is more, heavy-duty financial stuff, but it's a key part of the process. And so once you have the technology in place for the royalty piece and being able to kind of track and calculate the royalties, then for each customer, there's typically a different kind of ERP setup, but they're all available for integration. Because once you get into ERP, even though there's different ERPs, it's very standard. AP is AP, AR is AR, right? And GL is GL. And so those things are very standard. So it's just a question of technology integration, which is typically possible across all the ERPs.
Another question our audience has is, does licensee run on the major cloud platforms such as AWS, Google?
Licensee, yeah, so it's a great question. We are a cloud-based platform, and we offer it up. You just subscribe and sign in, and you run your business on the FADEL cloud. FADEL runs its cloud business on Amazon, and hopefully that answers your questions. It's a full subscription service. No installation necessary. Point and click.
Okay. Do you already integrate with any common data warehouses like Snowflake?
You can take extracts from reporting. You have the ability of getting to the reporting views, and you can take those and you can push them out to any warehouse that you happen to like. You know, some people like Looker, some people have Snowflake, some people are using Redshift, they're using data lakes, data marts, lake houses. It really depends upon your size and what you're trying to get with, with and from the data, whether it's in BI analytics or you're going multidimensional. That's entirely up to you. But the data is available for you to be able to leverage and push into other platforms as you see fit.
Okay. Does FADEL work with brand integrity software?
What was the question?
Good question. I'll take that, Dave. Yeah, does FADEL work with brand integrity software? Well, interestingly enough, I was immersed in consumer merchandise licensing for many years. Now I'm kind of more on the brand compliance side of our business, and our brand vision product that we have is a brand compliance suite that deals with things like rights compliance and content tracking for your content and things like that. So that might be of interest if you want to reach out after to learn more about brand vision, which is a brand compliance tool. But you're probably talking more about things like a product approval or brand assurance and things like that. And so again, we can integrate with that process from a SKU perspective for bringing approved SKUs in. And I will say that also at FADEL, we are looking to expand further into providing product approval tools that would go hand in hand with our royalty processing platform.
Okay, and I think some people are wondering if you've ever partnered or worked with the Sesame Workshop.
We've talked with Sesame in the past. We haven't done specific work for them, but we do have our customers who integrate to them from a reporting perspective. So if that's kind of where the question is can you produce reports out of licensee that could go to Sesame Workshop? The answer is absolutely yes. And I will say, these are great questions, by the way. You folks are fantastic. I want to make sure that you also have the opportunity, as many of you will probably be at the licensing show coming up, and feel free to stop by, booth H105 and talk to our experts who will be on site there as well.
It's unbelievable the number of great questions that are flooding in there. And I think just an important point to add to that, Dave, is if the rationale is kind of can you support a royalty submission to Sesame, right? We have licensors that we work directly with where we're kind of tightly integrated from both sides of the coin, so to speak. But the licensee platform can generate any format of royalty report, and you can set those up as templates in the system so that once you do it, set it up once, and then you can generate your royalty report in whatever format Sesame demands or whatever format Mattel demands or whoever else you're working with.
Great. Yeah. Great point. Thanks.
I think we have time for 2 more questions. One that I see here is, do you have an API layer for clients who have matured past .csv file exchange?
Yeah, sure. I mentioned it just briefly, Nona, when we first started talking about integration with the gentleman who asked about ERP to Sage. The answer is yes, we do have API layers if you do want to extend and integrate that way versus going ahead and using CSVs. We can absolutely do that as well. And I know you asked a question about DAMs as well. We work, it's again, Greg was talking about brand vision. But we'd love to talk to you more about what we do in the DAM space with some of all of the major DAM players from AEM and OPEX and Aprimo and others when it comes to rights management as well as usage and content tracking. Separate product. Would love to have that conversation. Please reach out.
Just add to that, we can offer some good content services within the brand vision platform as well. So depending on your needs. We can definitely talk about that. I'd encourage you to follow up directly with us.
And I think we have probably time for this question and one more. Somebody was wondering how FADEL handles security and confidentiality.
Security and confidentiality from the perspective of an infrastructure, or it's kind of a broad question, but let me say that we are From a platform perspective, we are GDPR compliant. We are SOC Type 1 and Type 2, SOC 2 compliant, as well as SOC 1 compliant. We are also part of the Data Framework Act here in the United States, licensed underneath the Federal Trade Commission. All of our equipment and software, as I said before, is deployed on AWS and fully managed, maintained from a security perspective, end-to-end, in-flight, at rest, as well as full encryption and lockdown integrity, et cetera. So if that's what the question was about, then the answer is you probably won't find a safer, more confidential environment to operate your business in.
That's great to know. Do you have any digital asset management, also known as DAM, partner platforms you recommend?
Yeah, that was the question Nona talked about. Greg, I think you answered that already. So yeah, please give us a shout out. We do work with a bunch of people on that side, mostly underneath our brand vision set of products. We'd love to talk to you.
I wanted to shout out to Chris. I see Chris's question there on clothing. Chris, check out Volante Design. Very cool Star Trek and Marvel related clothing stuff that they're doing. So check them out.
Okay, I think that's all the time we have left for questions today. Before we sign off, I'd like to again thank our presenters, Dave and Greg, as well as our sponsor, FADEL. Again, as Dave has previously mentioned, FADEL will be attending Licensing Expo this year from May 21st to May 23rd in Las Vegas. Please stop by their booth, H105, to come have a chat with them. Within the next 24 hours, you will receive a personalized follow-up email with details and a link to today's presentation on demand. Please feel to invite your colleagues and peers and whoever you think could benefit from this webinar. And again, thank you so much for attending and have a wonderful day. Thanks again, Dave and Greg.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Greg, always a pleasure, man. Good to see you.
Love it, man. See ya.
All right.